Hey, hi, how's it going? If you've been here before and you're back for more, I appreciate you to my very core. But if you're new here, welcome. My name is Becca and I tell your own personal paranormal experiences through short stories. If you have a personal paranormal experience that you'd like me to share and be featured on this channel, make sure to message me on Instagram. The link is in the bio. Without further ado, boo, here is today's story. In 1995, Jennifer was in her senior year of high school. One night, Jennifer and her cousins decided to take a Ouija board out into the backwoods behind her home. Now, they had messed around with this Ouija board several times in the past, and every single time they interacted with it, there was always movement on the board. So they're all sitting around the Ouija board, and they have their fingers on the planchette, and Jennifer asks what any 18-year-old girl would ask, "Who am I going to marry?" And almost instantly, the planchette starts circling around the board, spelling out the name Edward. Everyone kind of just laughed it off because Jennifer was seeing her high school sweetheart Randall at the time, and everybody knew that they would eventually end up married. And a year later, Jennifer married Randall at the age of 19. Now, unfortunately, shortly after the marriage, things kind of started to fall apart. There was constant fighting, they just disagreed on everything, and it seemed as if they were growing apart. The environment of the marriage quickly became quite toxic, and during this time, things started to fall around Jennifer. Whether it was a bag of dog food at Walmart that would fall off the shelf in front of her and explode all over the floor, or cups that would fall out of her cupboard with no explanation, things just fell, and they fell around her quite often. Jennifer really didn't think anything of it. She thought it was just weird. She didn't really relate it to anything paranormal or out of our world. So fast forward 2 years, and Jennifer decides she's no longer going to be living in this toxic relationship, and she files for divorce. After filing for divorce, Jennifer moved in with her dad and decided to stay with him until she could find her own place to stay. So they quickly set up the spare bedroom for Jennifer to stay in, and she brought all her belongings over. One night as she's laying there sleeping, she distinctly remembers feeling the blankets being pulled off of her. Now, thinking maybe her mind is playing tricks on her as she's under a lot of stress going through this divorce, she brushed it off. A couple weeks later, she's laying in bed, she's just about to fall asleep when she looks towards the doorway and sees two red, glowing eyes. As she lays there frozen with fear, she just continues staring at these eyes. Then, as any young adolescent would do, pulled the covers over her head. She stayed under the covers until eventually she fell back to sleep. The next morning, she decided to call her friend, and she knew her friend wasn't really spiritual, but she really did believe in the paranormal. Her friend ultimately told her, "You need to reach out to God. I believe there's a demon following you around, and God is your only answer." So without any hesitation, Jennifer reached out to God, and she found her faith in God. After becoming a Christian, nothing happened to Jennifer. Nothing would fall. She never saw the glowing eyes. Her blankets were never pulled again, and she strongly believes that by finding her faith saved her. Fast forward a year, and Jennifer's still living with her dad as she hasn't found her own place to stay yet. It was late one night and Jennifer was folding laundry on her bed and she had her back turned towards the TV. So she wasn't really watching TV, she was more or less using it as background noise. When all of a sudden this commercial comes on the TV and she's listening to it and it's explaining how if you call this number, we'll give you a free fortune reading. So Jennifer at this point is like, what do I have to lose? Calls the number. She's on hold with them for about 30 minutes when she finally gets through to a psychic. The psychic would go on to explain that she did see another marriage in Jennifer's future, but the man's going to be much older than she is. So Jennifer kind of just laughs it off and she's like, that was absolutely ridiculous. What am I doing with my life? So a couple months goes by and Jennifer was seeing people on and off and she had a date with a guy and he just didn't show up. So her love life wasn't really looking the greatest. So she's at work and she's talking to her coworker how she was supposed to have a date last night, but the guy just never showed up. So that's when the coworker looks at Jennifer and says, "You know what, I know someone named Tony, and I think you two would actually be really good for each other." At this point, Jennifer had lost hope that she was going to find another partner in life and was pretty hesitant to go forward. But her coworker kept pushing it and said, "I'm dead serious. I think you and Tony are legit soulmates." So after pressuring Jennifer, Jennifer gave her coworker her phone number for him to pass on to Tony. Later that evening, Jennifer's phone rang and it was Tony, and they hit it off. They talked on the phone for hours that night and set up their next date. Jennifer never really believed in love at first sight and she thought it was only in fairy tales. But when she met Tony for the first time in person, that changed everything. Not only did she fall in love with Tony for his personality, charisma, and loving character, she knew that this was the path she was destined to take. Tony's last name was Edwards, the same name that was spelt out on the Ouija board when she was in her high school senior year. And that psychic on the hotline that told her that he would be much older than she was, She was 24 and he was 42. 3 months after meeting each other, they tied the knot and got married. Jennifer firmly believes that our paths are already written out for us and our destinies are already there. We just need to learn to watch for the signs. 21 years has gone by since Jennifer met Tony, and they continue to live happily married. If you enjoyed today's recording, please leave a reaction. It's super rewarding. Wishing you nothing but a beautiful, blissful day. See you all on Monday. Bye-bye.